Okay, so today we're gonna go over navigation and also delegation. What that navigation is basically like if you've seen the tab bars that some apps have at the bottom, you can go to different screens. And also like the navigation bar, if you some apps have it at the top, you can go back to the previous screen. So we're gonna go over that today. Let's go to Xcode and make a new project. Let's do single view. Let's call it navigation. Okay. So let me minimize this. First, let's take a look at navigation through Storyboard, so it's a bit easier to see. So we have our view controller here, as we always do in the Storyboard. Let's go to this object picker library at the top right. Let's type in tab bar controller. Let's click and drag that, and we'll see we get this tab bar controller with two tabs that leads us to this or this view controller, depending on which one we click. So let's just move this arrow here to this tab bar controller, which sets that controller as the root view controller for our app. So that's going to be the first controller that comes up. And let's just delete this one. And let's also open this right pane and change the background color of this view controller to like this green. And let's change this to like red. And let's just run the app. So it should be kind of obvious what this is going to do. So we have this tab right here called Item 1. Click it, and it takes us to the screen. It's pretty simple. And that's how you make like tab bars. Now let's add like the navigation bar at the top of the screen. So let's go here. Go to the library again, type in navigation controller, and drag that. And let's just delete this table view controller it comes with. Delete that. So just select it and press delete. Then let's click on the tab bar controller and press Control and drag to the navigation controller. And then let's do a relationship segue for view controllers. So now we see that another tab has popped up here. That means this navigation controller is going to be a different tab in this tab view controller. So we'll just see what happens. This isn't what we want to do, but we'll just see how it works. So we have this, we have that, and then now we have this screen. It's black, but it has like a bar at the top for the navigation. So what we want to do is let's remove this, and when we do that, we see a tab option goes away, so let's undo. So you see it has 3, and then if we remove this connection here, from the tab bar to the screen, press delete, it goes away. Now if we run the app, we're just going to see this and the red, not the green one. So let's do this. Let's move the green into the navigation controller. So the way we do that is that we press the navigation controller, control click, drag, root view controller. Now let's run the app and see what happens. So this is our first item. Second item, it's the green screen, but with a navigation at the top. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's do something else now. Let's add a another screen. So let's go back up here, view controller, and let's drag that. Let's give it another color too. Let's get this blue. And then what we want to create is a button that takes us to the screen. But what it should do is it should also have like a back button at the top to go back to the green screen. So we tap the button here, we go over here, and then it should have a back button to go back to the green screen. So let's add a button. So drag that into the screen here. And then we can control, click on the button, press control, and drag to the blue screen. And then it shows us all these like options. Let's just do show. Now you can see that it already has this back thing to let us know that that's what's going to happen when this blue one shows. So then we have a red one. Let's go to the other tab. Let's press the button and barely see it. But now we have this, and we can go back. Button, we can go back. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is basically all you need to know to make like the navigation bars and tab controllers. You can change the images here, you can change the text there, but what we're going to do now is recreate this but programmatically. So because we're going to create delegates and also look into callbacks, which will let us pass information from this controller back to this one. So let's say you had like a text input here, and someone typed in like a word, and you wanted that word to show up in the screen. So you would need to implement a delegate or a callback to do that. So the way we do programmatically is we go here, let's go to info, let's delete the main, and let's delete this storyboard. Move to trash. And then let's go to app delegate, and window equals UI window, frame UI screen dot main dot bounds, window dot root view controller equals view, and then window dot make key and visible. So again, this makes a new window with the size of the screen, and the root view controller is the first controller that's going to be displayed in our window, which is view controller, which is this file here, and then make key invisible makes the window visible. So let's just change the background color of this so you can see it. Let's give it view.background color equals, let's use a color literal. So you just type color, and this pops up, press enter, double click this, and choose the color you want. Let's make the screen, and let's run the app. Now we have a screen on the screen. Okay, does that make sense what I just did? Alright, hopefully. Now let's add a tab bar. So the way we do this, right, let's make some space here. So let's call this view controller here the green one that we did over here. Let's just call it first. So let's do first equals view controller. So now if we did like first here, it would be the same thing. The screen thing would show up. But we want to make a tab bar, so let's do let tab bar equals UI tab bar controller, which is the same thing we had in the storyboard, where we clicked and dragged it, and we saw those two storyboards come up beside it. So then let's just make this UI tab bar controller. And let's make the root view controller the tab bar. Now we get a warning here. We'll see what this means. We see we have our tab bar, but we don't have any tabs on it because we haven't set those. So let's do that. So let's do tab bar dot view controllers. These are the tabs. The view controllers are going to show up when we click a tab. And here, let's go back actually. So view controllers. And when we alt click on this, we see it takes a type of arrays of view controller. You can tell it's an array by the brackets here. So it takes an array of view controllers. And that should make sense because these tabs at the bottom, they're basically like arrays, right? Like one tab here, one here. It's an array of tabs. So let's make an array and put in first. And now let's run. And we see we get our view controller with green showing up. Now let's add another tab. Let's make a new file. Let's use a Coca touch class. Let's call it second tab view controller. Do next, create, and let's give this a color view dot background. Let's use a color literal, and let's choose like this orange color. Let's go back to app delegate, and now we want two tabs to show up. So let's create a second tab. Let's call it second equals second tab view controller. So that is referencing this one. So it's instantiating a second tab view controller. Now let's just add that on to our array. We have second. Now let's run it. Now it looks like we added the view controllers here, right? First and second. But where the tabs are not showing up, are they? But look at this. Wow, it's there. So the tabs are there. They just don't have any labels or images because we haven't set those. But they still work. The tabs are there. So let's do that. Let's set some labels for those. So we can do tab bar dot toolbar items equals UI toolbar. Now we just reference my other one. Yeah, okay. So we can set a tab bar item for each of these view controllers. So we can do like first tab bar item equals UI tab bar item. Give it a title. So let's just call this first image. We don't want an image, and we see it's an optional type, so it can exist or not. So let's just do no, because we don't want it. And again, selected image. If we go here, it's also a question mark, which says it's optional, so we don't need that. So now if we run this, see what happens. Now the tab bar says first. So that works. And we can also see that it kind of highlights when we're on the screen. And it turns gray when we're on another tab. So we'll just set a tab bar item for the second one too. So let's do second dot tab bar item equals UI tab bar item title. So just go back. We see title is of type string optional, so we can include a title if we want, but we do want one, so let's add that. Let's call it second. We don't want an image, so we can do nil and nil. Then run that again, and we should see our label. Yep. So we have first and second. Does that make sense? Yeah. So now let's add the navigation bar we had on top of this green one. So let's see. Let's make some space here. Just a second. Tab bar. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna enclose this view controller inside a navigation view controller. So kind of like what we did here. This first and second view controller is kind of inside this tab bar controller, if that makes sense. So let's do let first nav equals UI navigation controller. And let's do parentheses so we can see how we can initialize it. We see there's an option for root view controller. Again, that's the first view controller that shows up. So if we want to use first, right? We want this to be the first view controller in our navigation. So we can just type in first. And then we can change our view controllers here to first nav because we don't want first, we want first nav. Now let's run it. And we get our navigation at the top with our view controller still there. So if you can kind of see what's happening here. At the very top, you could say, is the tab controller, and inside that is our first nav, which is a navigation controller, but inside the navigation controller is first, which is a view controller. So the tab bar, you can think of it as kind of being at the top, and then it having second, which is this view controller, first nav being the navigation, and navigation has this one. So let's do that pushing screen we had before, where we had the green view controller and we went to the blue one, and we could also go back. So let's create another one. So new file, CocoaTouch class. Let's call it present view controller. Create. Delete this crap. So view dot background color equals color literal. Again, do that. Let's select a blue color. See that. So now we have this view controller. How are we going to go to it from our navigation? Well, we need to trigger it somehow. And if you remember, in the storyboard we had a button. So let's add that button. So it's this one. So let's create a button. Let button equals UI button. If you remember this from our second meeting, it's button.set title. Let's do go to blue dot. So then this is just going to set the text of the button to go to blue. So button dot So we're not going to mess with any auto layout for this tutorial because that's not the point of this. There's no point in setting any constraints and doing all that. So we'll just set the frame. So 100, 100, 100, 100, see 200. So what this does is our button is going to be a position 100 from the X, so along this line, and our button is going to be 100 down from the Y, so 100 from here, 100 from here. It's going to be around here somewhere. It's going to have a width of 200 and a height of 100. And we just need to add it to our view, add subview, button, and so on. Okay, so it's around here, not, okay. But there's our button. We can click it, but it does nothing. So let's just add a function to this button. So let's do button.add target self selector dot touch up inside. So what this does, again, add target, just put self here, don't worry about that for now. Selector, our function that is going to be executed when we tap the button, is going to go inside the selector. And for touch up inside means do this selector when we touch up inside the button, which is basically like a click or a tap. So let's create a function for that. So we need to do at objc whenever we need to use it inside a selector. So let's do at objc flunk on tab. Let's do like print 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put this inside here on tab. And let's run. This has nothing to do with navigation, but this is how we set up a button and what it does. And if we click it, we see 1, 2, 3, 4 printing out over here. Okay, so now let's make that actually do something. So when we tap the button, we want to go to the blue screen. But we don't just want to go there, we want to push it onto the navigation so that we can go back to this green screen. So what we need to do for this is use the navigation controller we have over here, but we can't call that first nav from this file because the first nav variable only exists here. So how are we going to do it? Well, every view controller has a navigation controller property, and you see it's optional. You see the question mark here because not every view controller is going to have a navigation, right? If we go to this one, this doesn't have a navigation. That's why this navigation controller is optional with the question mark, because view controller can or cannot have the navigation. Let's do navigation controller dot push view controller, and the one we want to push is the present view controller because, as we can see, it's the blue one. Let's go back here and let's push the present view controller animated through. Now let's see what happens. So you go to blue, and it goes to blue. And you get a back button too. So it's really simple. And let's say you had another view controller that you wanted to go to from the blue one. You could have another button inside here, and when you tap that, it goes back to the new view controller, and that can go back to the blue one, and the blue one can go back to the green one. So if you guys know what like a stack is, it's basically a stack. You have view controllers on top of each other. If you want to go back, you have to go back one at a time, or you can go back all at once. But that's what this basically is. It's a stack of view controllers. Okay, and let's look at another type of presenting, and we can see that we don't have our label here. So that's because we can do this first. That should show up. Nav should show up. Yeah. So the reason our our label here went away. If you remember, it said first, but this first is attached to the first view controller. So this is attached to this, but if you look here, our tab bar isn't presenting first, it's presenting first nav. So we have to set a tab bar item for first nav. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we have our tabs, but I'm going to show you another way you can present view controller. So let's call this this new view controller Modal view controller. Let's do create. Let's give this a color. Delete this. So view.background color equals color literal. Select the color. Let's do like yellow. Let's go to this red view controller, which is second tab. Now let's create a button here. I'm just going to copy the button from the other screen. Which one was it? Was this one? Just going to copy that. And I'll name it go to yellow. And we need to create a function called onTap. It's going to give us an error if we don't do anything. So let's do WJC func onTap, and then let's do present modal view controller animated true completion. Let's not worry about this for now. Let's run it. Now let's go to second. You see this, it says go to yellow, tap that, and this yellow comes up. Comes up from the bottom, because we just presented it. So what this does is presents a view controller modally, which just means it comes up from the bottom. It's not like a navigation where you can go back. But right now there's no way to get back from this. We're kind of stuck. So let's go to this view controller. Let's just copy this again. We're going to make another button. Let's go here, paste that, and let's say go back to red. Again, we need to make a function for the selector, so WJC func on tab. Then, so what we want to do is basically dismiss the yellow one, and there's a function called dismiss true completion again. Let's run it. Go to yellow, comes up, go back to red, and it dismisses. So just this one line, these one-liners present your view controllers super easily. Like, it's really easy to do this. So there's not much else to presenting these view controllers with navigation. But let's say we want to pass information from one to another. So like, let's say we had a text input here, and so a user typed in some text, and we want that text to show up in this view controller. How do we do that? Well, we have to use delegation, or we can use callbacks. So let's use delegation first. So this is our green one, and this is the one we're presenting, the blue one. So we go to blue, it's this. So let's just make a button here first. So I have that pasted. Let's call it toggle. Let's make a function for that. OBAC func on tab. And let's make a variable called toggle for this class. So let toggle equals false. And then when this button gets tapped, we can do toggle equals not toggled, which sets, let's say we tapped it once, it would set toggle to the opposite of what it is. So true would be false, false would be true. It says you can't assign a property because it's let. Lets are constants, so we have to do var. All right, so just run this. You'll just see that a button comes up that says toggle. Nothing's gonna happen there, nothing that we can see. Toggle. All right. Now let's just make a label here. So let's call it let label UI label. Now what this is, it's a closure. We went over this in the second meeting, I think. You can find the video on our Facebook page. So let L equals UI label, return L. So if you can see what this does, so this is kind of like a function, and then we execute that function with these parentheses. So UI label is going to be the value of whatever this function returns. So label is going to be the value of L, because this returns L. So let's do that, and label dot text equals, just call it toggled. Oh, we can't use label because we're using L inside the closure. All right, now let's add this to our view. So add subview label, but this isn't going to show up anywhere because we need to set the frame. So L dot frame equals CG rect. Let's give it a position of, let's say, 200, 200, 200, 200. So then we can see our label here. Okay, so now let's change the label whenever we tap the toggle button. So we do this, toggled equals not toggled. Let's just do label dot text equals toggled, and then let's use this to put a variable inside our string. So we can do that. Now we go here, press toggle, it's going to say toggle true, toggle false. So initially, let's just set this to false because it's false initially. All right, so now we have a button that toggles some value and we can display the value on our screen. But let's say we want to see the value of what toggle is on this screen. Okay, so we change that toggle here, we make it true, we go back, and this should say like toggle is true. So let's go back here, create a label for that. So let's say let label UI label. So again, this is a callback. So I mean a closure. So what this does, we have a function, and the value of label is whatever this function returns. So L is equal to label. Now let's add this view, add subview label. Now we also have to set a frame for this. So let's do frame equals CG rect to 200, 200, 200, 200. Let's run that. All right, so we have this label that just says toggled is. We'll just make it toggled is false because toggled is false initially. So now it would say toggled is false, but then we want to do, let's say toggled is true now. We go back here and it should say toggled is true. So now let's get into delegates. All right, so if you guys know what interfaces are, that's kind of like what protocols are in Swift. So we're going to use a protocol to create a delegate. Let's just see what that looks like. So protocol, let's call it toggle delegate. And now it's going to have a function called toggled. Just call it is toggled. Cool. So what this means is that we created a protocol called toggle delegate, and that protocol has a function called toggled, which takes in a Boolean value. And you can notice that we haven't even said what the function is going to do. We just named the function, so it doesn't do anything right now. So let's do this. Let's create a toggle delegate. Let's call it, it's of type toggle delegate. Okay. All right, so now whenever we tap the button, it should do something with the delegate. So let's go here. Let's do toggle delegate. Dot, and it has this function called toggled. I'm going to pass in toggled. Now we're getting this error here. Nope. All right, let me just look at my thing here. What was it? Push controller. Ah. Okay. So now we have our toggle delegate. So what this does is it creates a delegate we can call from this view controller that we can use it to call the function. So it'll be more clear once we see what it does. So we go back here. This is our green view controller, and we set up the delegate in our blue one. Let's go back here. Now what we have to do is we have to conform to the protocol we created. That means we have to implement all the functions that were in this one inside wherever we use the delegate. So let's do this. So we have to save all the files, and then we can get toggle delegate. Now we'll get an error here. So it says type view controller does not conform to protocol. So we'll just click this red circle and do fix, and we'll see it creates a function for us. Yep, there it is. So what this is going to do is whenever we call toggled here, it's going to call the function over here. So you can kind of see how we can change values in this view controller from the blue one. Again, we have our blue view controller here, and we call the function toggled, and then this view controller does something when that function toggled is called. So for now, let's just do like print is toggled. So this is the value, this is the Boolean we're passing in from here that you can see. We're passing in toggled, and that's the value this gets here, is toggled. So this isn't going to work yet because we have to set a delegate. So let's do PVC for present view controller, present view controller, and let's do pvc dot toggle delegate equals self, and let's change this to pvc. Now we'll kind of see what this does. Let's go to blue. Press toggle. You can see it prints true. Well, let's press that again. Huh. That's pretty neat. So what's going on here is that we're calling toggled here with this value from this view controller, and this value is being passed using this function toggled to this view controller, which implements this function, and then it prints that value. Does that make sense? Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to set the value of this label to whatever is being passed in. So it's pretty easy. Let's just do, so we have our label here. We can do label.text equals, say toggled is, and then let's use this again so we can put in a variable into our string. Let's do is toggled. Let's go here. So let's set toggled to true. We go back. Toggled is true. Let's go back to blue. Toggled is false. Let's set it to false. We go back. It's false. So we can see how we're passing information from a view controller to another one using delegates. Now this is pretty useful. Let's say when you have like a screen that comes up and you're asking for some input and you want to send that back to a parent screen maybe, you can get that text or image or whatever and send that back here and do something with it. So this is nice, but it's kind of sometimes annoying to create these protocols and then have to conform to them and create these delegate variables. So let's look at another way we can do this. So let's just say toggle, let's create a variable called toggle callback. And that's going to be of type this weird thing. Now, what this thing means is that its toggle callback is going to be of type this function. So this function takes in nothing and it returns nothing. Okay, so then let's just call that function whenever we tap the button. So let's do toggle callback, but it's so we can't just run the function like this because we'll get an error. Let's see. It's because it's an optional. So we have to add a question mark. So we'll see why it's an optional in a second. So we have this toggle callback, and then let's go back to our view controller. Now we have to save the file so we can see the updated properties of the view controller. So you do Command Alt S, save all files. You can see it's not gray anymore. So we can do pvc.toggle callback equals this. Just do print callback. Now let's just run it, see what happens. So we go to blue, we press toggle, and you can see it's printing callback. So this is like our delegate. We go to present view controller, we call the delegate here, and then this implements that delegate function toggled, and it does this. That's the same thing that's happening with this callback, really. We have a callback here. We don't say what it does, just like the delegate. We don't say what it does. We don't say what the callback does. But in our controller, we do say what it does. This is what happens when we call a callback. So again, here we just call the callback. We have no idea what it does. We just call it. But then here we do whatever we want to do whenever it's called. Does that make sense? Okay. We can, so here, let's go back. So I said I would mention why this was optional, because let's go here. We can remove this, and it's still going to work. Because we can use the callback if we want, or we can not use it. That's why it's an optional. When we go here, it's not going to do anything at all. But then if we put this back, it's going to print callback. That's why this has a question mark. Because if it doesn't exist, we shouldn't execute it, which is what these parentheses would do. So if we wanted, we could also pass in a boolean to the callback. So let's just do bool. So what this does, remember, we had nothing being passed into the callback and nothing being returned from the callback. So let's just do bool here, and then it's going to give us an error here, missing argument. So we want to pass in toggled. So we're just going to pass in the same variable we use like for the delegate. Toggled, we're going to pass in toggle, but if we save all these files, we're going to get an error here. Or, let's see, so let's just say t in, and let's print t. Let's go to blue, toggle, and now it's printing t. Well, what's t? It's this toggle we passed in. So we pass in this toggle, it goes to the callback, and t in just means like any values we pass into the callback. So toggled would take on the name t here. So we can pass in something else. We can do like let's say it takes in a string too. So this callback takes in a string and a boolean. So a string and a boolean. Now if we save this, it's going to error and say it's missing parameters. There we go. So it says insert string. This callback calls for taking in a boolean and a string, but here we only pass in a boolean. So let's give it a string. Just say this was from callback. So we pass in a boolean and we pass in a string. Now if we go here, save all the files, we can do t and string in this. We can do print string. Now let's run it. So here, toggle, and now it prints the value of toggle and the string we passed in for the callback. So callbacks are useful when you don't want to create these like big protocols and conform to them, because it's a lot more work sometimes, and you can just use callbacks instead if you want. Alright, so let's see. We can also make the callback return something. So let's do this. So the callback takes in a boolean and a string, and let's say we want to get a string back. Let's put in a string here. Let's go back here, and let's return. Let's return a string that says from green controller. Because this is the view, the green controller, and let's just return from green controller. Go back here, and it says result of call is unused. Now the reason it says that is because it gets a string back from the callback, but we're not doing anything with it. So we can do this. We can do let string equals that. Now we see the warning is going to go away because now string has the value. Well, now we get another warning because it's never used. So let's just print string. So what this is doing is string is taking on the value of whatever this callback returns, which is going to be this. So go here, let's run it. Go to blue, toggle, and it says this was from callback, and it says optional, but that's fine. It says from green controller. So what this is doing is we're passing in toggled and the string. It goes here, it prints toggled, it prints the string, and it returns the string. And then we go back here, the string value equal to whatever it returned, and we're printing that string, which is whatever it returned. So this is basically how you pass data between view controllers. You can also use this to pass data between views and view controllers. Let's say you have like some sort of complex view that has a button in it. And when you tap that button, it should maybe print something. You can create a callback from that view to the view controller, just using like something like this, and then you can print it from the view controller.
Can you explain the question mark?
For this?
Yeah, when you use you said it was optional, but what do you mean by optional?
Yeah, okay. Again here, let's. So what this means is that let's remove this here. So right now this object or this instantiation of present view controller has a toggle delegate, which is self. So if we go here, we can see that we have a toggle delegate, and that's an optional too, because here, let's just remove that too. Let's comment that out, and let's run it. So let's go to blue. Toggle prints nil, because we're here getting this. So what that means is that this can have a value or it can't, because let's go back here. We don't set a value to toggle delegate over here. Like toggle delegate isn't optional, so it can or cannot have a value. Here we don't give it a value. We just have PVC, and we just ignore the values it has. Because when we make the present view controller here, this is all that loads. And you see this has no value, this has no value. So that's why when we go here, we give them values. So we do this.toggle delegate. So that means this is being given a value of self. And the same thing with this. So toggle callback is being given a value of that. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, but like if you use that in like real life app, like when would you ever use that?
This?
Like the question mark and stuff?
Well, you could use it like this. Like, again, we could, let's say you have two different view controllers, and one of them doesn't care about this callback thing. Then you can just like not use it, right? Because then when we go back here, here, let's remove the return actually, because that's printing out nil over here. Let's do that. All right, so let's go back here. So it's not returning anything. Okay, so let's say we had like two view controllers. One cared when a toggle happened, and one didn't care when it happened. So let's say this one didn't care when it happened. We don't have to create a toggle callback. And that would still work, because if we go here, we see it's an optional, so it checks if it exists, then it executes it. But let's just say we didn't have that. Let's say we have this. Let's see if that works. Okay. So we can do this. And let's go back here. So let's uncomment this and just run it. It should work normally. So we go here, toggle, and it works. But now let's say we're in a view controller that doesn't care about the toggle. So we just comment this out. So what that would do is this value of toggle delegate is going to be nil because we haven't given it a value here. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go back here and run it again and see what happens. Go here, toggle, toggle, and it crashes. Does that make sense? Because if we use the exclamation mark, that means this has to exist. But if we go back here to the file, we see that this doesn't exist. We have never set the value of toggle callback here. It's never been set. So this is still going to be nil. But then we try to use it, but it's nil, so it crashes. So if we do an optional here, this checks, hey, does toggle callback exist? If it exists, then we run this. But if it doesn't exist, we don't do anything. So it's not going to crash. So again, let's run that and just see what happens. So we haven't given toggle callback a value here. And then we go to the button, toggle, and it doesn't crash. All right. Anything else? Nope. All right. Well, that's it for this lesson, this tutorial, whatever.